Okay, so here's another video I'm going to record. Show you just another trick in terms of being able to analyze the data, particularly with dates. All right, so one of the things we have here is on the membership table. All right, what we have is we have two fields on the membership table. If I double click this, expand it out. One is the renewal date, all right, which is basically when the customer would renew, and then we have their join date, so it was the date they signed up, all right, and everybody has one. And one of the things that would be interesting to know is what's the duration? How long have people been members of Sam's Club? All right. So one way to do this would be if you could figure out what the difference is between the renewal date or the join date and the renewal date. That would give you some approximation of kind of how, relatively how long, they actually have been a member of Sam's Club. All right. So there's actually a function. So there's one of the things that's nice about Access. It has a whole bunch of built-in functions that you can tap into. So rather than go through a whole elaborate calculation of breaking down the renewal date and the join date and then doing all sorts of calculations to try to break it all up, there's a function. And the function is called dateDiff. All right. So I've got a query here, demonstration query. So what I've got here is, just to explain this. All right, so this is the members table. All right, so I'm going to dump the whole thing out. All right, so I've got zip code, member type, renewal date, join date. Okay, so I'm going to display all that. And then if you look here on this last column, I've created what we call a function. All right. So we did this before where we calculated what day of the week. We used a function in another previous video where we calculated the day of the week, what day of the week a particular date fell on. All right. So this is the date diff. So we're going to use something a little different this time. We're going to use something called date diff. All right. And what date diff says is, okay, I'm going to create a field. So basically what you do is the way this operates is you create a field. So you put a field name in. We'll call it members duration. All right. Followed by a colon. So it's members underscore duration colon. And then the actual structure of the command is it's date diff. So usually they call this actual camel case. So you have like humps. So rather than put a bar in between, but date diff. So DATEDIFF, one word. Okay, that's the function. All right, and then what we're going to enter is we're going to give it some parameters. All right, so it takes 3 parameters to run. So the first one is basically what do we want the results to come back in? So we want, and there's a whole bunch of different options. What we're going to select is D. D stands for days. Okay, so the first parameter is, and we put that in double quotes. So the way we're reading now is we've got a bracket. Okay, excuse me, we have a left paren. We have double quote D, double quote, comma. All right, followed by the 2 fields, these fields, renewal date and join date. So what we'll do is we'll use the join date first, which is the lower number, and then we will put the renewal date second. All right. Now the fields, one of the functions in Access is standard. If we're doing stuff with a field, it's in the table. What we have to do is we have to qualify it with. We have to surround it with a bracket. All right. And if we have more than one table, if we join, say, 2 or 3 tables together, what we have to do is put the table name in brackets, followed by a dot. So it would look like, so, this could also translate to date diff, D, in brackets, members, dot, in brackets, join date, comma, bracket or members in, members in brackets dot renewal date in brackets, followed by a paren. All right. So sometimes it gets a little tricky with this. What will happen is if you don't get it right, sometimes what it'll do is you'll see a function error instead of a result. So you have to kind of noodle a little bit with the kind of the format. Make sure that you put periods where the period should be, and in this case there should be no periods, just a comma, all right, or colon, date diff, which is the function name, parameters, 3 parameters inside parens, left and right parens. First one is what we want the calculation to come out in. So we want to come out in days. We want that in double quotes, comma, the first parameter, which is the join field off of members, comma, followed by the renewal date off of the table, also in brackets, followed by a right paren, right? So let's run this. All right, so if I execute this, let's say to do a view. AC view, boom. So what I've got here is, now I can, basically we can see this gives us some relative idea of the duration of how long, newer members versus older members. All right. And we can do stuff along the lines of we can sort it. So we can sort it by the date, by the duration. And we'll make this we'll make it descending, so that the longest people will show up first. It's one of the things you have to kind of, when you look at ascending versus descending, ascending is A, B, C, D, E. Descending is D, C, B, A. All right. Or ascending is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and descending is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So let's sort this descending. All right. So this gentleman here, or whoever this person is here, all right, is that membership number, has been a member of Sam's Club for 5,480 days. If we divide that number by 365, that will tell us how many days, or basically how many years they've been a member. Or we can divide it by 12 and it'll tell us how many months. Right, so I mean, some of the stuff may be approximations, but it might be off by a day because you get 30 days and whatnot. But it's just, this should give us at least this number right here. Taking the difference between these two fields will give us an idea of, who's been out here longest. Now what we can do is we can take this information, we can create a table out of it. So what I'll do is we'll do a on our query 2, so what I'm going to do here is I can make this a, oh, hang on a second here. Go to design view again. Sometimes it gets a little tricky jumping back and forth, so if you get confused, just wait a second and kind of come back into it. Do a make table query. We'll call this member duration. I'll call it member MEMBER. Member underscore duration. call it table, so we don't mess it up with the field. All right. And what I can actually do with this, the other thing I can do, all right, so that will execute. So you have to remember when you define it, so we're still defining it, then you have to run it. So if I don't want to show, I just want to see the duration, I can unclick these, which will take it out of the result. All right, so then we'll create a table only with the membership number, zip code, member type, and the duration. All right, so we take the dates out. We execute this. 15,375 rows, yes we do. And now we have a member duration table. I double click member duration, and as you can see, there's only four columns in this table. All right, so it's the membership number, the zip code, the member, and then this new, basically this new field, which we calculated, which is the duration, which is the difference between the join date and the renewal date. Okay, so that is it. Okay, you kind of play around with that and see if it might be of use somewhere in your analysis.